All right, so now we will move to our next segment, which is a panel discussion. The panelists will present ideas on the way that traditional education systems around the world can revamp themselves and adapt to the needs of the 21st century learners. Our moderator is Ms. Shireen Galal from Consultancy Group for International Education. So go ahead, Ms. Galal, you can take the lead. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you. All right. I hope you've had a good lunch. Okay. And so we start our session, our panel today, and I'm sure everyone is very interested in the topic. I mean, for the past day and a half now, the theme actually is related to what we're talking about today. It's less schooling and more education. And why do we need to reinvent a global educational system? What I would add is reinventing a global education system, but maintaining one's own culture. Now, we'll go in a different way. I'm going to have my colleagues introduce themselves and tell us how this topic is related to their field, because strangely enough, only 2 of us are teachers here. The rest come from a background of entrepreneurship. Thank you. We'll start with Arti.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Arti Jarrell, founder of Future Edu. Future Edu offers career mentoring programs for high school children. And we do this through a curriculum, a 4-year curriculum for high school students, which is based on a model of self-discovery and experiential learning. Talking about experiential learning, that's a topic very close to my heart, and I'm highly passionate about it. And I've had the opportunity to pioneer and promote experiential learning in several thousand colleges across India and a few other developing economies through a nonprofit that I was working before I started this venture. And during this time, we interacted with several thousand students in colleges, and they would undergo our student leadership program and come and tell us that, ma'am, you came to us late. You should have come to us when we were in school. Probably that would have helped me decide what I should do and why I should do that. We are really not sure about the career path that we have chosen now. So this prompted us to start Future Edu. And now, having said enough about myself, I also want to add one more point about me being a teacher in the past as well. I was a professor teaching finance in a few MBA schools before I joined this nonprofit to promote entrepreneurship education. So with this experience in higher education, and whatever experiences that we have gathered on ground in the last few years working through Future Edu, I have a few points to put forth on the topic of discussion. Number one, I want to highlight the pitfalls in the current education system. The focus is currently on, or rather excessive focus on technology and infrastructure rather than the student. Next, what is being taught in the classroom is very different from what is expected of the student in the real world. And the third thing is a number game. I think universally we are still dependent on grades to understand how a student is performing. And that actually is wrong in my opinion. What we end up doing is actually preparing them only to take exams and judge them for their performance on that one single day. And you never know, and you also want to understand whether they've acquired the knowledge. So the focus is actually on mastery of content and not on knowledge. The focus is on syllabus, not on curriculum. The focus is on a task-oriented approach and not an outcome-oriented approach. So what do you think we should do? I know there's a lot of dialogue that's been happening the last 2 days on this topic. And I feel there should be a significant shift on the goals of schooling itself. What we should be doing is to prepare these students to equip themselves with what is most relevant for them in this world, what is most relevant for them in terms of, say, socially, economically, intellectually, for themselves. And that would prepare them to take on the world with confidence. And I also feel, because social emotional learning is another important area we are working on, and what has been universally accepted as these life skills also need to be revisited. I think the focus should be more on things that help the individual look inward. Self-efficacy, self-regulation, goal setting, confidence, empathy, curiosity, imagination, and overall ability to build their own self-esteem so they can take on the world with confidence. I also think there's a huge paucity of time in the classrooms which determines what happens within the class, and that constantly pressures the students and the teachers. And this I say particularly in the context of India, because we believe more is better. More work, more classes, more homework, more tuitions, and this is what is expected to lead to more marks. So instead, what I propose to do is probably we could follow what Finland has taught us, less is more, and try to reduce the amount of workload we impose on the students. So less testing, more participation, less work, less homework, and more knowledge, and also less structure and more self-directed learning. So with this, I would pass on the mic to all my other panelists who are wondering if I'm ever going to pass it around.
Thank you. So hi again. I'll be shorter this time. My name is Dina Mooch, high school teacher in Switzerland, and also the founder of Bulby app, the app that connects students and tutors so they can maybe have better grades if they're looking for some. This panel is, I think, the crucial one. I'm sorry to say that for other panelists, but the word education, if I may put my teacher hat, we need to take that word out of Latin, and ex ducere. And ex ducere means literally guidance out of. And this is really interesting because if we take the word learning, we only apprehend this word by the teacher with the arrows go to the students, meaning he's going to have the knowledge and he's going to give the knowledge to the students. If we think of the word education, and again with the ex ducere meaning, is the teacher is actually involved in the process of taking something from the student out of himself. And that means also that the students need to get something out of himself or herself as a knowledge. That's the first point. And a second point that's really important for me is educators are, there's a lot of educators in the world, and teachers also need to be educator, but if we think of another educator, and I think this is the first one, is the family. Parents are educator, and parents do not go to school to give knowledge to their child or children. And if we think teaching as an education manner, well, there's all the feeling part that goes with the teaching. Let me explain myself. So for example, as a teacher, I'm really emotional with my students. I get emotional. I said a lot of time to them that I love them, and I don't feel ashamed about saying to them, I love them, because if you say to your children or to a teenager, I love you, you can do this, of course the children or the teenager will follow you because he's going to gain trust, he's going to put a relationship, and the bond will be created. And I have no shame also to say to my student, you didn't do your homework, you didn't do well, this is not good, I'm mad at you, but I still love you. And the student knows the boundaries, know the limits that he's not allowed to cross, or if he stays in the frame that I put as a teacher, of course, he will be happy because we can actually get into that education system. I think that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Arti. Thank you, Dina. Well, going back to what they were saying, let me just introduce myself properly here. My name is Etienne Gilliland, and I'm the lead for the consultancy group for international education. I'm also the vice chairman of 2 international schools back in Cairo, Egypt. I come from Egypt. What we do is actually not only establish startup schools or revamping of schools. The professional development is more concerned with how to deal with our students. Now, I come from a generation, I think we all do, and even the current students, if we have any students here, we're still like the mass production of a system, an educational system, rather than the individualized education for our students. So I'll just mention 3, what I came up from school with, 3 things I have learned in school as opposed to 3 things I should have learned. The first thing would be competition. Who gets the highest grade and high scores on tests versus teamwork. Unfortunately, as a mother, now I'm a grandmother, but the first thing I would ask my kid is, what did you get? And he says, A-, and said, my first response would be, who got an A? Why would I do that for a child? This I've learned later on, unfortunately. But that's the thing. We don't base. It's the system that bases our kids to, or the mindset of the parents and the kids, and even the teachers of standard-based, measurable, as opposed to skill-based. So we need to, as we all hearing today and yesterday, to actually reinvent a global system where more is on the individual. Another example is the one size fits all. One size doesn't fit all. So, I mean, I was treated just like the average student or the top student. Not that I was the bottom student, but no, everyone has his own way in learning. So we need a lot of differentiation. That's what we gear our teachers now, and that's what we do with our consultancy group. It's more of you really need to relate or to address the needs of each child than anything else. Now, the last thing I'll be talking about is graduation requirements, as opposed to the content-based, as opposed to the skills-based. We heard this morning how most of the kids all over the world now, not only in Egypt, so I heard, is that they're not prepared for that career there that's waiting for them. We're not preparing them actually for a career that is not structured now, a career that is, we don't even know what it's gonna be like. I mean, we're gonna hear jobs that are created in the next 10 years that don't even exist now. So how are we going to prepare our kids for that? Mr. Hasan, would you like to continue with that? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. My name is Hasan Sitar. I am an accidental educationist. So it's important that I explain what my background is, so you understand where my research is coming from. So I started my career with Shell in London. And over the next 14 years, I worked in the corporate sector, including banking, where my last job in 2010, 7 to 10, was CEO of Barclays here in Abu Dhabi. My mother had 3 children, 2 of our brothers, and the 3rd child is the school called Silver Oaks. So she got ill and she was dying, and her liver was failing. So I moved to Pakistan at the end of 2010, having worked 14 years in the corporate sector across 14 countries. I moved back to take over the school and to manage it and put professional management in. And 3 months down the road, I realized that this is what I want to do. Shaping the next generation and trying something to protect their future is a cause worth fighting for. So that meant that I had to then transform into an educationist, which meant that I had to self-teach and learn. So I started doing research. And because my background meant that I knew what the practical world is like, so I was primarily focused on life skills and what children need to succeed in practical life, given that I'd worked in multiple countries and in multiple industries and so on. Now, in terms of our enterprise, we do three things. We own and operate 25 schools, pre-K to K-12. We do teacher training and development, and we do curriculum development and research. And that, for the next 3 minutes, is what I'm going to talk about, which links into the topic for the day. So there's a paper that I wrote in 2016, which is titled Getting Smart, Need to Focus on Creating an Enabling Environment Structured Around the Objective of Realizing the True Potential of Our Next Generations. So receivers of education believe that education is quantum of knowledge transmitted through instruction from the teacher to the student, right? That's what we've been talking about. This system is obsessed with measurement. Measurement against, and you measure quality of instruction, and you measure learning outcomes as well. So there are two issues with that. First, this knowledge is all historical facts, things that, it was said earlier today, things that we already know. That's what knowledge transference is. And it is obsessed with measurable limits, which essentially limits attainment level. This, in my view, is a factory production model. These are how factories were set up. That is not how education is meant to be. So Aristotle believed that virtues are habit forming. You, through intervention and repetition, they strengthen. If you don't use them, you lose that. So we conducted a study. We pulled 23 outliers of the human race from all fields and said, based on their reported history, do they possess any virtues which are common? So out of the 23 people, there are 4 types of virtues as given in the academic literature: moral, civic, performance, and intellectual. We found that 8 virtues were common. So the first one was repeated 13 times in the 23 people, second 11 times, then 9 times, then 8 times, then 7 times, and then 6 times. These virtues are flexibility of mind, focus, originality, persistence, initiative, resilience, reflectiveness, and curiosity. Interestingly enough, they are all intellectual virtues, which means they are skills and they can be taught. So the challenge that, basically the next challenge that I threw at the academic world in the academic literature was, we've got to create a way of actually teaching these skills. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is, I read a paper, there's a research in 2004, which said that 34% of people in urban Pakistan have some form of mental health issue due to the inability to deal with stress and frustration. So this was shocking. They said, let's see what we can do. So I then started working on putting a program which has now taken a completely different shape. It has now been 7 years running. But the first part of that program was putting life skills into the curriculum. Teaching life skills, structured program on life skills, which focused on 2 areas, self-esteem and thinking skills. So we put that in place. We were projecting that in the course of 5 years, self-esteem would improve by 55% and thinking skills would improve by 65%. That's actually happened. Now we have data over the last, so it has been running now for 6 years. So it's a structured taught program. We then added within that program what we call holistic child development, which is 30% of our curriculum. It is a taught program. So it has things like, one module is civics, manners and culture. Second module is this life skills. Third module is health, nutrition and physical education. Fourth module is valuing diversity and inclusion. And fifth module is being a responsible global citizen. So that's what we've been doing. Essentially, I'm trying to bridge the gap between the education field and the practical life that I've witnessed, and that's essentially what all our awards have been about, holistic child development. And that is my life's work. That's what I'm going to keep hopping on till in forums like this, all over the world, till people start listening and we actually start changing this education system. So that's all I've got to say on this.
We'll talk about the challenges in a bit, yeah. Okay, Anya? By the way, Anya is originally a lawyer, but her passion for education has changed her career.
Yeah, is that working? Yeah, really? Okay. So I'm very happy to be in that panel, because this panel reflects finally what I'm trying to do since 1.5 years with TIA International. It's a lot of my engagement, and this engagement is about how to teach young people, not to teach, how to empower young people to find really their way in their life and to enter any territory, any uncharted territory, what they want to do and how they can do that. It led me, when I talk a little bit about myself, I come from a very competitive family. My father was world champion in rowing. Me, I had a tennis career, so as well I studied law, because when I was young, I always thought that my dreams and everything what I had around me, that was not well understood, and I had the feeling I'm not okay, and I have to ground myself. And I have to learn all these skills, these hard skills, because I'm not okay. And even if I understood very early in school what it means to be, what evolution means, and that everything is connected, but during my pathways in school and in university I lost it because of all these competitive environments. But I thought that is the right way to do and to pathway my career in a linear way. So I wanted to become a very important lawyer, so I studied Chinese, English law, and I was very afraid not to do that pathway as a woman as well in that time, what was not very easy, because you had to decide in Germany between being a woman in career or having a family like that. So it's quite a lot what you put on one card. So career had to work out. So I was very in these competitive fields, and it was not even enough to do a career in law. I as well wanted to go in the capital market. So in a few years I listed over 20 companies in different fields. After that, of course, it had to stop a little bit, and then I had to find my pathway, because my health stopped me. And that was the way when I understood how disrupted I was already for myself and disconnected. And young people today, they run in the same trap. And they think careers are linear. Careers are in one way, and as well companies propose that to them. So they're not prepared, because even me, I took quite a lot of time for my studies. I went abroad, but today they don't do it anymore. They don't travel anymore. They don't invest in their personal skills, and their personal emotional skills are not guided by anybody in school, and not by the teachers, and even not in university. So how to address young people and to inspire them to go out of their comfort zone, because they are in a very tricky comfort zone. They think their linear career pathway is secure, but that is a security that doesn't exist, neither in Europe and I think neither anywhere in the world. So I thought about how to connect these young people again with themselves, and I first got in touch with them and I asked them, what do you need? What do you think what your career will be? And they said, yes, we have no orientation. Maybe I will drop my study after 5 years. And I tried to do a little research and checked how do universities and schools do a follow-up, what becomes out of the students after they left or when they left in between. And I've seen there's a big dark figure. So actually universities don't tell about that. Every company has to tell. Every company has to show the impact. But schools don't have, and as well university don't have. So maybe with the impact it's a little bit tricky, but at least they should know what comes out of their education system. And we know, all of us know, that life is not going linear. And because life is not going linear, careers cannot be linear at all. So as well, the pathways are not linear. So what do we do? And it is very clear that when we are in linear systems and they become more and more complex, that they have to crash. They cannot work on. And that is what we face, and why we hold on to education systems, just because we think we have to fuel it in a way what is market-driven. That is not the right approach for me, from my point, and that is not the right approach for my competences and from my experiences, what I make, as even today with young kids. So I developed here international, and I provide now with mostly, I started immediately worldwide. So I found really inspiring people around me. They spread my message, and we think nearly the same way, and we want to empower young people during travelings, pathfinder travelings, as career pathways. So we found very outstanding project partners in different sustainable fields, as well in industries, who already understood that emotional and social emotional learning, and that all these, what you said, that all these skills are necessary to guide a responsible and reasonable future, and to define that future together. So in India we have now over 20 project partners in different fields, sustainable fields, and the young ones, we do an assessment before, so we find out what they think they need for their career, and we work out with them what we think they could open to in a holistic way to become a complete person, to become a complete professional and not a high professional. And then we send them out to our projects partners where they have hands-on experiences, where they develop their skill set, and where they have as well interdisciplinary exchange to other people, in between their intercultural exchange. So it's really very holistic. All of these experiences we bring over and transfer that in school projects, where we guide, where we work with teachers from different countries, bring them into the school so that the school's kids have authentic experiences in sustainable fields. So they learn about water scarcity with somebody from Rajasthan who really knows what it means. And even as well from other school, as well one school in Bangalore, these kids telling then the other kids with videos, okay, what it feels and why it's important to be aware of water and what it feels if you don't have water. And then the kids understand what it means to be connected, and what their actions have influence not only on themselves, even on people in other countries. So in the end of that maybe 90 minutes lesson, they understand we are all connected. We are all one world, even in our differences. We don't lose our identity if we are connected. And on the other hand, we know we can drive the change because we understand now the complexity and we know about our action and the consequences. So they are free in their decide, they can free decide, okay, if I buy 10 jeans, but if they buy 10 jeans, they know now what it means. And that is the same what we do with the students. They learn experience-based. with with pathfinders on their side, reflecting their experiences, and they learn just by doing. And learning is that it is beyond. It is not only in school, it is not only in university, it takes part always. Always, every minute, every second, with everybody. And when I'm aware of that, my life is a long life, long-term learning. And that is good because we develop. And this is as well our THEA projects, they develop together. It's not me, I'm not important. I will be away in a couple of years, but hopefully the idea and the spirit will be carried on by young minds who really can make the change and will make the change in a responsible way, because we are running awfully out of time, not only here, in the world. So I pass it on to you now. Yes.
Thank you, Anya. I like the idea of the student exchange. Yeah, actually taking them out of their comfort zone. It's not only students that you take them out of the comfort zone, but teachers as well, because it's a brilliant idea, and I think it should be, and that's a first step actually of how to do less schooling and more exposure to the kids. Mr. Rahul,
yes,
our journeyman here.
yes, guys. So my name is Rahul Bhatt. I'm the CEO of a company called The Journeyman, which is based in Amsterdam and has operations in US as well as India. We do a lot of things which my colleagues here told you about, but let me not bore you with that. I want to talk to you regarding something which is very personal. So the question asked here is less schooling and more education. Truth be told, I was the poster boy of failed schooling system back in India. My father and my mother were educators since a very long time. I mean, I think they spent 30 to 40 years in the Indian education system. I was not very good with my scoring in class 10. People from India understand that. It's a board exam, so not very good there, not very good at 12. And there were a lot of teachers who basically told my father that I should open a shop and work there because I don't have any future. So as I'm telling you, I was the poster boy of the failed schooling system. I loved my teachers, although, and I loved my school. But the whole education system I did not understand. I went on to work for Fortune 500 companies at a very high position, so I did okay for myself at the end. I think what we need to understand is that to change the education system, we need to face the brutal truth. And the brutal truth is that education system is not facing problems of technology or the problems of bad teacher. It's facing the problem of relevance. There are million students like me across the world who are losing their faith in the education system just because they do not score and they are sort of put off in the corner, and later on in their life they are able to become something. They basically say that no, this is not the right way to educate their own children. So there are millions of people who are falling through the cracks on daily basis because of grading, because of negligence, because of the whole system we have cropped up. What Journeyman does is basically finding similar Rahuls like me and help them to achieve the goal they are destined to. This is a very, very important thing for me because this is not profession, this is personal. And I personally want to make sure that through my company, I am able to save at least few Rahuls, if not millions, to achieve their potential. That's all for me.
Thank you very much, Rahul. I don't know. Oh, thank you. Alex, how many, do we still have time for questions? Thank you, all right. Please feel free to, if you have any questions, we're here to respond to that. Yes?
Hi, thank you for the very interesting discussion, or rather introduction, and the topic itself is interesting. I wanted to ask probably all of you, just in a short summary, probably, if possible, just maybe 2 sentences. So how, in your own way, are you actually reinventing the global education? I did have a chance to meet with Dr. Arti in the break, and she told me briefly how interesting it is, the work that she's doing. So I would like to hear actually from all of you, including Dr. Arti, because I think everyone will benefit from it. Yeah. Thank you.
Right.
Like I mentioned when I introduced myself, we are into career mentoring for high school children, and we do this through a sustained intervention that is provided over the period of high school. And we do this both through the schools and also individually. And we kind of do everything that my co-panelists were talking about, addressing social emotional learning and using that to enable career readiness and career awareness in children. And we offer this through 3 different programs. One is our career mentoring program, another is a study abroad prep program, where we work with the student much early on and encourage them to explore beyond their comfort zone and try to go outside and study, like Anna was talking about. So that's one. And yet another program is our learning programs, where we focus even on younger kids. There are some schools which are open to work with us right from when their students are young. So we offer learning programs in the area of growth mindset for students right from grade 2 onwards, and that focuses on building resilience in them, which my colleague Hasan was talking about just now. So, and we also focus on the teachers. We have a teacher leadership program where we work to coach the teachers about the new philosophies we are trying to imbibe in building career-equipped lifelong learners who are socially and emotionally engaged.
Thank you for the question. I need to take the example of myself. I never wanted to be a teacher since I became a teacher. I wanted to be a journalist, and I did my entire master's degree into journalism. And once I got to be a journalist, I felt so sad, because actually the profession is a really solitary profession. You are in front of your laptop and you read, like you try to write articles. So I had this urge to be among human beings. And I really fell into a class because my diplomas could actually get me the chance to teach French literature. And I had this magic of being among students, and the first thing I say every time I have a new class, I have 4 of them every year, I said to my students, look, I'm a human being like you. I do parties, I do have relationship, I do have parents. I'm not someone who goes into a box at night and don't get a shower and don't do nothing. I have a life like you do, and I can actually learn a lot from you. And that goes again with the word of education. I can learn a lot from you. And once the student listen to that, they actually think that they are responsible of my education. And of course, every year I learned from my students, even if they are now 16 and I'm 34. And by the time I became a teacher, I was 24, and my oldest student was 21, and I learned from him too. So for me, my mission as a teacher is always remind myself that I have other human beings in front of me, and they have a life, they have struggles, they have sadness, they have a joyful time, and I'm so curious to know about them, and that's why the relationship starts. And of course, I'm going to teach them, and I'm going to educate them with my field, French literature, and I'm fortunate for that because mathematics might be a little more complicated, and this is the relationship I intend to have for, let's hope, for the rest of my life.
Up till now, does that satisfy you or you need more?
Yeah, I think while I'm making notes, so just in summary, what I got from Dina is building relationship, which is mutually respectful relationships is the crucial part.
That's the core, yeah.
Yes, is the core, which is not what we see in regular classrooms, because it's top-down approach where one teacher is telling a class of 30 what to do and how to do it, whereas this way where children feel respected, trusted, and they can trust their teacher, I think would make a big difference, yes. And as Arti said, it's mentoring. So yes, if you can just tell me probably, what a typical day for you looks like Dina said, on a typical day, she would be with her children, building that relationship, and that is what matters in reinventing the global education system. Yeah,
Exactly.
thank you.
With
Yes.
that question, we're going to be here all
Yeah,
day.
that's right.
We start talking about our typical days.
Do we have more questions? Are you satisfied with what?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
we have more questions?
There's one at the back as well.
Yeah, thank you. Dina, you mentioned something which I did really like so much about the parents are the first educators. And this is something that I encountered throughout the past 3 years in my teaching career, that every time I try to make my students understand that life skills more important than grades, when they keep on nagging and asking about the grades of their tests or quizzes, I say, I don't care about what you scored. All what I care about is what did you learn in my class. Then they answer back, well, my father said, no, this is not right. It's the grades. We need the grades for the university requirements. So can you tell me how to help my students understand and grasp the concept that life skills are more important than grades?
Thank you for your question. Unfortunately, you have a sad answer and a positive answer. The sad answer is as long as the school institutions will put grades on the first, on the major way to go on another level. I mean, I don't know, I don't have the term in English, but as long as grades will be that important, of course the students will wait for that grades and to good grades. But besides that, it happens to me all the time and every year. Of course, I do as you do to evaluate my lesson, because this is the worst. We are educators, we are teachers, we evaluate our students every year, once in a week, and we don't get evaluated. I don't understand that. So every time I do, and I give evaluation for my lessons, and I receive that evaluation. And when I ask them, what did you learn into my class, they never say Voltaire, Candide, and all those authors that we love and that I cherish. They say, well, actually, I learned life. I learned something else, and it's such a pleasure to come into your class that I forget about the grades and I forget about the exams, but I don't forget in a meaning way, oh, I don't care. I forget and I enjoy having the exam because I learned it not the way you were saying from the top to the bottom. I learned it the way I forget that's that important.
I think the problem does not lie in the students' performance or what they say, it's the parents' mindset. No matter what you do with the students inside the classroom and what you teach them, kind of skills they need when they go to university, or life skills or workplace, it's the parents when they talk to them at home. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Can I add something here?
Can I just address this for a minute using a sports analogy? So this is what I told my kids. We were brought up in a very competitive household. So, but when my kids were growing up, I told them that I don't really care what position you are at. So long as you're doing the best that you are doing and you have the start of the highest available grade, so an A star starts at 91, I really don't worry about going from 91 to 99. Do something else. And I gave the example of the difference between golf and cricket. So in cricket, you can bowl a beautiful ball, the batsman snicks, somebody will drop a catch and the person will survive. And you've got to start all over again. In golf, you can play around with Tiger Woods, with your handicap and his position, you can still win. Because you're not competing with him. You're competing with yourself and you've got to play the course. So if you can teach kids that you are not in competition with other people, but in pursuit of finding your most optimal output path, then that's the way to go. That's my 2 pennies on this.
Actually, to my program, very often the family is coming asking me to take their children on these journeys because they are so often not on the right pathway anymore, not connected with their children anymore. So they don't know what is the best for them. So they don't provide anymore the classical career pathway. They don't know. Even the parents need orientation today.
Exactly.
And that is something when I go even with somebody who's 25 or 26 on one of these journeys, I have to talk with the parents. So I pick them up at home and I explain them and I even stay beyond in touch with the parents. So they as well are part of the learning journey. You cannot exclude that, and maybe there are possibilities to do that as well in school.
Yeah, this is what I want to add. As you said, Ms. Karen, that it is very important to engage the parents in the learning of their children. And I think the new methodology now that there are something called positive discipline, and this positive discipline is directed to the parents. So the parents will understand and be engaged in the skills that their children needs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can we wrap it up?
Just to let you know, of course I understand that we need to educate parents, but as a teacher, I'm trying already to educate students, and then of course I would love to open a school for parenting, but I'm not a parent, so it's kind of hard to give lessons to parents to say, you should do that like that. The only thing I'm saying, and I was saying, maybe I'm sorry if I didn't, I was that correct with my answer, is if a children is happy in class, he will never go to his parents and say, oh my God, I didn't have grades, I didn't have good grades. Because of course, if he's happy, he's gonna have good grades. And if he has good grades, the parents who's waiting for the good grades is gonna be happy. I think it's a process, and it should be starting into the class.
All right,
Can I say something?
Yeah, please start.
Sure. So let's be back on the topic, okay? Because I'm from the corporate world. You know, we try to stick to the topic rather than roaming around here and there. What do we need to do to reinvent the education system? That's the critical question here. And I really want to ask you, maybe after this we can have a chat. What do you need to do to reinvent the education system? Is it going to be educators? Is it going to be parents? Is it going to be the schools? I believe, and this is my personal opinion, you might disagree on this, that the most powerful people, if you see the Time magazine and all the other magazines, are the corporates, Google's, Facebook, Microsoft. They actually dictate 90% of the things which happen in the education system as well. So you can change your school, you can change a parent, but if the people who are actually employing these kids, let's say 10 years down the line, if they are not changing, the whole system will fail. And that's why it's very important to actually start the change on the top. You don't have to have a top-down teaching approach, but the change approach needs to be top-down. Otherwise, it's all going to fail, unfortunately. Most of these governments are run by these top companies. My 2 cents on that.
Yes, I think you're true. So just to wrap things up for Alex, so the core of education is basically to expose students to authentic, to real-life learning, as opposed to just the content, as our colleagues here were saying. Top-down, I agree with Rahul, because in order to change a school or a parent, they will not even be convinced with that, because at the end of the day, they need grades to secure the kids in the university level, to secure a job of what they wish to be. But that's why it has to come from top, and then we can do that with schools. With our schools, we can do whatever we want, but then you still have to address the grade issue. Thank you very much, and it was really a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shireen, and to the panelists.